Welcome to Cafe Grit. My name is Beth Campbell, and I am the author of Where the Hell is My Bacon?, a book about a corporate team that triumphed over shitty leadership with the help of fried pork. I open Cafe Grit as a place where you can join me in figuring out how to channel your grit and find your voice in the world, whatever that means for you. This is the place to go when you've got the hankering for purpose, the taste for fulfillment, and you're tired of living the rat race. Thanks for stopping in. Cafe Grit is now open for service. Hey everybody, welcome to Cafe Grit. I'm your host, Beth Campbell. This is a place to go when you've got the hankering for purpose, the taste for fulfillment, and you are tired of living the rat race. Thanks for joining today. Today, we are going to continue our conversation about being let go, layoffs, getting laid off. And as promised last week, I'm going to go back in time and cover some red flags that you might want to be aware of if you are going through a challenging time at work where you're just not sure, things maybe feel like they're changing, you're being treated differently, something's different, and you're worried. I've got some red flags for you. So stay tuned for that. We'll get to that in just a minute. As for me, I'm still looking for my next adventure. And I don't know about any of you who have gone through the job search where you've been looking for a job. If you sort of fluctuate greatly between, oh my God, I fucking got this. I could be a VP. I could do anything I want. I could try something different. I am on top of the world. Yes, sign me up, apply. And on the other end is, holy fuck, how am I ever going to find something? I don't really want to do exactly what I was doing before. I'm kind of burned out from that. I've been doing it for 23 years or whatever you've been doing it for. And shit, I don't have those skills. How could I do that? I don't 100% qualify, and just questioning yourself with that inner voice kind of popping in. I hope it's not just me, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's sort of this polar opposites of how I've been feeling, of really being confident and yes, this is going to be great. And I'm going to make it the best, where I can make a difference and where I'm valued and it's a great culture. And then the other side of it is, oh shit, am I qualified for anything? Anything? I know it's inner voice stuff. My inner voice, if you didn't know, is named Liz. And sometimes I have to tell her to shut the fuck up. I've had to tell her to shut the fuck up quite a bit lately. So anyways, what's happening with me? Well, I am about to republish my first book. It's called Where the Hell is My Bacon? How an Innocent Pork Product Conquered Employee Engagement and Change Management at a Large Midwestern Corporation. I had to read that off of the book because that's a mouthful. Where the Hell is My Bacon? It was my first book. I published it through a hybrid publisher. Don't judge. Hybrid publisher. I can't even talk today. I might need to take a sip of water. Ooh. It was published through a hybrid publisher, which means it's not a traditional publisher. For those of you who don't know, a traditional publisher, basically, usually you'll get less of a cut of the book, but they do all the work for you. You don't have to pay anything. They have all the editors, content editors, grammar editors, proofreaders, book designers, cover designers, and they do all that for you and market it for you. And then, but usually you'll get maybe a smaller cut than you would with other methods. And then there's self-publishing, where you just do everything yourself. And I'm actually going to be doing that with this book. And then there are in-betweens. And those are typically where you might pay somebody, but then they would do some amount of marketing for you and provide proofreaders and editors. So that's what I did. I ended up paying for that. And I did that knowing that what I'll call a hybrid publisher isn't the optimum way to do things. But I was new. I'd never published a book, and I really wanted somebody to hold my hand through it. And I'm really grateful to this publisher for helping me through that and being with me for these first few years. But the downside of that is I have no control over my book at all. And I believe my book was overpriced on Amazon for the content and the size of the book. I had no control. So I was able to very amiably get out of the contract with this publisher. And so now I'm going to be republishing the book. I've got a new cover out there that if you're following me on social media, you've probably seen some of my options. I haven't picked one yet, but I've narrowed it down to 4. So check me out. Instagram, thebean67, that's THEBEANN 67, or on LinkedIn, I put them out there as well too. But I'm going to be republishing that book, so I'm really excited. So the other thing I'm excited about is in the last few months, I have published my second book. It's in ebook form only right now, but I'm working on the print version. It's called From Blah to Badass, Your No-Bullshit Guide to Channeling Your Leadership Grit. And again, like Where the Hell is My Bacon, it's got some sweary words in there, but it's just a down-to-earth, no nonsense, not coming from higher up corporate CEOs or experts or psychological experts or whatever. It's just a no bullshit guide to some tips on what is good leadership through examples of what not to do. So there's some examples in my life and some folks that have fed back to me about their experiences with shitty leadership and what not to do. It's more of a what not to do book. But there are also some great tips on what to do in the context of what I've seen that you shouldn't do. Anyway, check it out, From Blah to Badass. Where the Hell is My Bacon will be coming out very shortly. But let's get into our content today. This is part 3 of the I Got Laid Off series. The first part was all about dealing with the unemployment process, which is still no fun. The second part, episode 051, was released last week, and that one is all about sort of the event of getting laid off, like the short term, what led up to it, and then the aftermath. I talk a little bit about my severance package and some of the things that have gone on there. So if you think you're going to be laid off, or if you have been laid off, or if you're just curious about what it's like to get laid off, you have some morbid curiosity, check that out. So today we're going to talk about the months before. So last week, I sort of hinted that I knew that this was coming for months. So when I got the one-on-one on my meeting notice, I knew 99.9999% sure that this was going to be the call where I was going to have my position eliminated. And I was right. And so today I'm going to talk about some of the red flags that you might experience that might lead you to believe that your position is in danger. And this just happens all too often. So many people have just been blindsided. So I will just say, my overall message is, if your spidey senses are kind of, coming in and your gut is sort of feeling not right, listen to it, and we'll have some great tips on how you can better manage that awareness, just in case, right? There's nothing wrong with being aware. So before we start, I do want to caveat that, again, I will refer to, quote, management, and this is a context of a number of individuals. So some of these red flags may come from me. Some of them are feedback from other folks. But these are, when I refer to management in my examples, I'm referring to a collection of people. I'm not naming anybody in particular. And also a reminder that this is my perception of events. This is my truth. There is always another side of the story. I don't know what that other side is, but there always is another side, and there's usually some truth in the middle. This is my truth. This is my perception of what I experienced in the events that happened. The other thing is, I just want to let you know, just for context, that I was a fully remote employee during this entire time. So all of the examples that I may give you about things that I experienced were experienced as a remote employee. So there was nothing in person. And finally, I do want to say this. I started documenting my experiences about 6 months before my position was eliminated. Memory is very fickle. And we know that over time, you can remember things differently. I can't even tell you how many childhood events I am absolutely sure about a fact. And then several of my siblings will point out that, no, that's not how it really was. So it's important to capture your notes and your recollection as soon as possible. after or even sometimes during the event. So so I started documenting some of these things as soon as they happen, or sometimes while they were happening. I would, because I'm a fast typer, I'm a fluid typer, as someone once told me. And I encourage you, if you are feeling something's not right, document it. Document dates, times, what you recall was said, that kind of thing. We'll talk a little bit more about documenting a little bit later, but it's important to do so. There's nothing wrong with doing it. It's not a panicky thing. If it turns out there's nothing going on, then hey, no harm, no foul. But it's always good to just document so that you don't have to worry about remembering a lot of things in detail. And sometimes when you're in a situation like this at work, there are a lot of little things that do add up. So just to give you a little bit of background for of my position at this company and where how we got to this point. So I worked for this company for 5 years initially. I'll call it the fucking consulting firm. So FCF. I worked for FCF for 5 years, and then my old position at my previous job became available. I had several people reach out to me, and I was ready for a change at the time. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back to my old position at this company. It was for a particular team that I had had before, a particular boss, a particular role, a particular department, a particular path that I thought would happen. I took a pay cut to go there, but I just needed a change, right? So I was there for about 9 months. And during that time, it started to become a bit of a train wreck. So they went through an entire reorganization methodology of how they ran projects, overhaul. My role went away, and until the really last minute, I didn't even know what my role would be. My team went away. In fact, I got split up. I didn't know who my boss was going to be. Everything had changed. Everything I came back for had changed. So I was kind of really at a point where I maybe was open to possibilities. I was committed to staying in this position because I had just only changed 9 months ago, or 9 months previously, but I was certainly open to if there were any opportunities that came my way. And an opportunity came my way when my old boss from fucking consulting firm reached out and asked if I would be interested in coming back. And I felt like he needed me. And I, even though when I left, I didn't know if I was providing value. I had a different mindset now. And so I came back. I had a lot of really good heartfelt conversation with my former boss, the one who asked me to come back, mainly that I was going to be very transparent, that I had not maybe shared or revealed my sense of lack of value when I left the first time. And I wasn't going to do that again. If I felt somebody was micromanaging, if I felt I was being left out, if I felt that we were not doing things in an efficient or productive way, I was going to speak out. So I had that conversation a couple of times with my soon-to-be boss, old and now new boss. And he was great with that. And I expected the same of him too. I wanted him to let me know if there was something that I wasn't doing the way he wanted me to do it, or whatever. If he was, concerned about something, I didn't want anything left unsaid. So when I came back to this company, fucking consulting firm, it was great. For about 2.5 months, I was like on top of the world. I expected that I was going to retire from this company. I was really committed. The team was great, always had been great. I was feeling much better about my sense of purpose and what the difference that I could make with this company. And that was great. I figured I'd be there again, maybe for, 10 years and then retire and go work in a flower shop. And then my awesome boss got a great opportunity and he ended up leaving the company. So my management at that time changed, quote, management, end quote, the greater collective management, and had been changing a little bit even before he left. But I was still optimistic. As much in despair as I was when my boss left, I was optimistic. And I was verbally and sincerely supportive of new management during this transition. And, the company was going through an acquisition as well. And there was a lot of uncertainty, but I was committed. I felt comfortable The person who ended up temporarily leading the team and eventually permanently leading the team, I had worked with for 5 years, had a great relationship with. We'd always had a really great working relationship. So I was very supportive of this change and optimistic, and thought, okay, we'll just see where this goes. And things did seem fine for a while. Now, this is over the holidays, so there's a lot of activity going on outside of work and stuff. But it was about 4 months after my boss, who brought me back, had left. Something changed. Something changed that I really couldn't put my finger on right at the beginning. But whereas before I had been having pretty good relationships with management, with the management team, and at some point early in the year, some things started to change. There were a lot of things that I observed and experienced and heard over those months, from when they first started to change, when I first noticed it, and then when I ultimately got let go. And I will say that if this had been 1 or 2 or even 3 things over that period of time, I really would not have even paid attention, right? I wasn't in panic mode or anything. I was just starting to observe and experience things, and they just continued. And it is the continuation and the quantity that made me concerned, and to really start looking a little bit harder. Because otherwise I would not necessarily have just concluded that, oh, I was being pushed out. But there were just so many of them over the months that it was quite clear. So I'm going to frame this conversation as a lessons learned. Again, some of these are red flags that I experience, and I'll talk about a few of them. Some of them are feedback that I've gotten from other people. But if any of you are out there feeling like something isn't right, again, maybe you feel like you're being treated differently, or your gut's just pinging at you a little bit, here are some red flags that you should look out for. And of course, document in no particular order. So if you feel like something has changed in your work environment negatively to the point where you feel like you have to document it, like even the thought crosses your mind, that's a red flag. If you're even contemplating it, if the thought occurs, should I be documenting this? Or you feel like you need to write something down after a call, that's a red flag. Performance reviews, which I hate performance reviews. I think that they're stupid. We should be able to do top down and bottom up performance reviews, but nobody ever does that. So I've never once been able to, as part of a process, rate my boss, which should absolutely be standard and default in any performance review. I hate them. I hate ratings. I think it's demeaning, whatever, but we do them. And companies find them important. So I can look back on my annual performance reviews for the past 3 years. That's what I had access to in the system. And I could see that for 3 years, I was rated as an exceeds expectation for all 3 of those years. So it's a 1 to 5, 3 is meets, 4 is exceeds. For 3 years prior to my last performance review, I was rated as an exceeds, a 4 or above. This last one, I was just a little bit above a 3. So maybe it could be me. Maybe I was, somebody perceived that I was not performing. But when I really think logically about it, I was doing the same work, working to my high bar or above, rocking it, as I say, and suddenly new management comes in and my performance rating plummets. Again, it's not a conviction. It is just a red flag. But if that happens to you and you find that you've consistently had really good performance reviews, and then suddenly new management comes in and you're having this sort of spidey sense kicking in, and then your performance rating or review doesn't go as well, it's a red flag. Just note it. It's a red flag. If you have your quote management, quote leadership cancels meetings, like your one-on-one, like maybe you have a one-on-one call and they cancel those frequently, or maybe they just completely cancel them totally. Or if you're a manager and you have a manager level meeting or a staff meeting, and those are canceled frequently with no good reason, or maybe they're just taken off completely off of the calendar, or at least your calendar, then that's a red flag. Again, it's not a conviction, it's just a red flag. If you're no longer included in calls, but you know that they still continue, that's a big red flag. So if you're just uninvited, or maybe they've been rescheduled and you're not on them, but you're still playing the same role and you expect that you should be involved, that's a red flag. If you are a manager and you notice changes in your direct reports, so for example, I had a direct report who, with no indication, no conversation, just one day ended up not reporting to me, reporting to somebody else. I was not talked about it. I was not aware of it. I found out because I was doing timesheets and I noticed that there was one missing. So maybe there's a case where some of your direct reports are having activities that you think that you should be taking care of as a manager, but they're being offset to somebody else. Those are red flags. If your staff, your direct reports change and it seems inconsistent with your role, or you just don't even know about it, that's a red flag. That's a big red flag. If your salary is called into question, arguably this could be the biggest red flag. Money is a big reason why people's positions are eliminated or people are laid off. It's almost always there's an underlying money factor. I can tell you that my salary was called into question directly to me, and it did give me concern that it was under scrutiny. In fact, I was told it was under scrutiny. So if your salary is brought up because you make a lot of money, right? If you're in a higher salary, or really any salary, if your money is brought up in any context where you get any indication that it's going to be an issue, or it's under scrutiny, or that money is a problem for your team, department, or portfolio, whatever, that's a red flag. If you see other people, sometimes as an individual, or even for me as a manager, I might be privy to information about other people's salaries. I don't know why bosses would talk about other people's salaries to people that are not them, but sometimes it happens. And so if you see someone else's salary called into question, especially if the salary gets called into question and then later they are no longer employed at the company, that's a big red flag. And both of those happen to me. So, what else? If your interactions with your quote management, and maybe even your peers changes, maybe the tone changes, maybe your management starts being impatient with you on calls, or being defensive or distant or awkward or curt. If it feels tense and you start maybe holding back, like you don't want to question anything or ask a question because you're afraid that you'll get one of these uncomfortable reactions from quote management, that's a big red flag, especially if you've had a good relationship with someone previously and now you're in a position where you feel like it's different, and they're talking to you in a authoritarian, dismissive, distant, curt, impatient, that kind of thing. That's a big red flag. If your expertise and knowledge related to your work are no longer heard or valued or taken into consideration, that's a red flag. I'm going to caveat this one though, because for every woman I've ever known in corporate who reaches into her like mid 40s, this happens to all of us. For some reason, we just start getting taken not seriously. So it's a red flag, but it could be a red flag that's just the general corporate world and how women are treated. It's just, I hate to say it's normal, but it's kind of normal. If you ever found yourself in a meeting and you made a suggestion that you know is solid, maybe it's advice or a caution or a solution, and you get kind of brushed off by the other males on the call, and then a little bit later, another male basically says the same thing. In my case, I had a couple of guys who were really good about taken it back to me. They wouldn't just take it as their own idea. They would say, hey, what Beth said earlier, I think we need to talk about that, right? And by the way, thank you to those men who have done that, because you're awesome. But if you've ever been in a situation like that, that's a red flag. That means you're not being taken seriously anymore, which means that you're probably not being valued. If your responsibilities get taken away, that's a red flag. So it might start with seemingly supportive statements like, well, I don't want you to get overwhelmed, or I just want to make sure that you don't have too much on your plate, which, by the way, those are backhand slams, right? They're basically implying that you can't handle your work. But so it starts like that, but then it becomes a little bit more authoritarian, and you kind of get that impatient or direct sort of conversation that I talked about earlier. Or maybe like your management will insist that someone else will be taking care of that, even though it's under your realm of responsibility, even though you've done it before, even though you're clearly capable. And then if you say anything and they just continue to dismiss you and say so-and-so will take care of it, or you don't worry about it, that's a red flag, because those responsibilities will get taken away, but sometimes you're still responsible for the outcome. You're still responsible for the effects or the impacts. And then it becomes like you're being set up. It sort of feels like, well, you're making a thief and then you're going to punish them, right? You can't effectively do your job because somebody is pushing it off to someone. Sometimes that someone who they push it off to often will come back to you and go, hey, I don't know what's going on. Can you help out here? And like, well, why the fuck? Wouldn't you just let me handle it to begin with? I know to pull in, whomever. But red flag. If your responsibilities start getting taken away in spite of you insisting, pushing, protesting, that's a red flag. And especially if you are being held responsible, if you're asked, well, so whatever happened with blah, 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 blah. And you're like, you took that responsibility away. So, but then you get punished for it. So that's a red flag. If you start getting excluded, this is a big one. If you start getting excluded, or at least not included in discussions, in decisions or alignments that clearly fall into your responsibility area, that is a huge red flag. This was probably the biggest red flag for me. There were countless times where I would become aware of meetings held without me about my projects that I managed or oversaw, where I was not included. I believe, just me talking, I believe excluded. And then I would learn about these meetings from team members, project staff, clients, subcontractors that worked for us. Embarrassingly, they would say, where were you? Or we, and sometimes they would say, even in the meeting, we asked, where's Beth? Shouldn't she be here? And they would get dismissed or would just get brushed off. So there were countless meetings that I was not involved with that I would find out from various sources. Not anybody, being a narc telling on anybody. It was just people going, hey, did so-and-so follow up with you about that meeting we had? And I'd be like, well, what meeting? And then it would come out, oh, some meeting that you should have been at because you're the project manager or the manager or whatever. So that's a huge red flag. And that was probably the biggest one for me, is just continually over and over again, being aware of all the times that I was excluded. But then, like I mentioned earlier, expected to, it was to the point of ridiculous where I would be excluded from a major decision conversation. And then like a week later, someone would say, where are you at with whatever? And I would be like, where am I at with what? You didn't tell me anything. Now, again, I knew a lot of this because, again, people would reach out and say, why weren't you there? Just innocently. And then I would become aware and, look into things, and guess what? Big meeting, big decision about something I was responsible for, not included. That's a red flag. Okay, what else? If you confront your quote management, quote leadership about something that you're concerned about that doesn't feel right, that you're getting conflicting answers for, or whatever, and they either give you vague answers or not any answers at all, that is a red flag. So I because I was aware, because I think and I observe things. That's what I do. About 5 weeks before my position was eliminated from the company, I asked management directly if my position was going to be eliminated. And I was told there are no plans to eliminate any positions at this time. So no. And then about a week before I was actually eliminated, made redundant, I reached out to our HR on an unrelated issue, and if there was a decision on something, and they had told me no, but there were some organization discussions happening between management, and that was probably holding up this decision. So when I heard organizational, I immediately responded back to this HR person and I asked, are there any positions being eliminated as a result of this organizational discussion? And I got no answer. And why this was telling, and again, this is why you should just be aware and observe and work on your emotional intelligence as to why you perceive things. This particular HR person had very consistently been a quick responder. So you know how like you have some people at work who just take forever, for fucking ever to respond, and some people like myself, quick responder, your type A's, they always respond quickly. And this person was always a quick responder. And I had numerous emails and I would always get something back within a couple hours. When I asked whether there would be any positions eliminated as part of this recent org discussion, I didn't get an answer. I never really did. And this was a week before my position was eliminated. So that was very telling to me. That was a red flag that the person's behavior was inconsistent. So the person would have had to either lie, because I believe that there was already discussions happening. That's me talking. World according to Beth, speculation. Probably this has already been in discussion and she could either respond or lie. That's my guess. But again, perception. Maybe there's a whole other story. Maybe she was on vacation and just didn't do her out of office. Maybe she just got lost. Who knows? But guess what? Never got a response. So that's what I perceive. So there were a lot of other red flags, a lot. Certainly some that I can't talk about because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But I had a lot of people reach out with concern or just innocently letting me know about things and asking why, or just generally asking why things are different. I'm not getting the same communication. Why was this canceled? Blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of other things. And I'll just say this, when you make relationships a priority with your team or your peers, or your clients, your subcontractors, your contractors, your clients, your business partners, whatever it is, the people that you work with and in your life, when you make those relationships a priority, and when you build trust with them and you're transparent with people, they will be transparent back to you. So that is a lesson for you and a lesson for, quote, leadership, that you can't filter everything. People see things and they do talk. So even innocent questions asked by some of my colleagues, hey, why weren't you there? I mean, if you're smart and you observe things and you're aware, that becomes something just to document and add with all of the other evidence. So what does all this mean? For me, it meant that I was a step ahead of, quote, management most of the way. I knew that I was being pushed out for months. I had time to prepare. I had time to put money in the bank. I had time to make arrangements. And I knew when I got that random one-on-one call for the next day, end of day, that's where I was going to be let go. So that's what it means. It means that you can be at least more prepared. Again, all of the things I did many things that were set up to help the company better deal with my role and my situation, because I knew the company had changed, management had changed, and management had taken some of my responsibilities away. So I was proactive. I asked for a salary decrease and never got an answer about that. So I did everything in my power to protect myself and be prepared. But on the side, I was preparing. And there's nothing worse than, because I know I have a friend who was laid off very unexpectedly, very much without preparation earlier this year. And I I would not want to wish that on anybody. So I would rather be prepared and be a little bit paranoid, but and still continue to rock my fucking job and not give anybody and proactively address those things that I thought maybe management or leadership was considering as part of my overall value. It didn't matter. I still got my position eliminated, but at least I was prepared. So if any of you are out there feeling like something is just not right, don't discount that pang in your gut. Start paying attention, listen, look, feel, don't deny anything, document, continue to build those relationships. The people that can be your support and, be there for you, and that you can be there for them, and maybe have relationships that extend beyond your work days if it comes to that. And yes, document everything during, if you're a fluid typer like myself, or after interactions, when you start to feel like things are different, if you're getting that management impatience, very directive, sort of just different, not a constructive, respectful response, start documenting that stuff and use facts. But don't discount the perception of events, right? You might perceive that someone is angry. That's legit. They might say that they're not angry, but your perception is their behavior led you to perceive that they were angry. So just do facts, but also, make some note of, if it made you afraid, right? So don't ignore things that are not right. And I'm not saying that you should go off the rails and be complete paranoia because of one thing, but if a lot of little things are very telling. So if you have a lot of things creeping up and there are more and more of them, the quantity is also a red flag too, and very telling. So call things out, put them on the table like I did. Again, I was proactive. I asked if my position was going to be eliminated. I asked if there were positions being eliminated as part of a greater reorg. I requested a salary reduction when my salary got called into question. Confront the unknown, work through that discomfort. Sometimes someone is either going to lie or they're going to deny it and it's going to be sincere, or they're going to be silent. Either way, you will gain more information. You will learn something from their response. So, how many of you have been in situations where you suspected something bad was going to happen to you, something was going off at work, and then it did? Did you know? Did you follow your gut? Or did you bury the feelings? And how did it all work out? I want to hear from you. Please look me up. YouTube, The Bean, THEBEANN. Instagram, Threads, and Facebook, The Bean 67, THEBEANN 67. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Beth Ann Campbell. I want to hear from you because I know this is a topic that so many people have had happen to them, where, and maybe you're a person who ignored all of the evidence or all of the red flags, and then you did end up getting laid off. I want to hear from you. I want to hear about your experience of this and other things. Check it out. Check out the podcast. Please subscribe, give me a rating if you have a few minutes. I so appreciate you. The most important thing about this whole thing is you. Yeah, you. I'm talking to you. You're a fucking badass. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Take it easy. Hey everybody, thank you for stopping by Cafe Grit, where the moxie is fresh, the passion cold brewed, and everything is served with a heaping side of mojo. For more Cafe Grit episodes, please check out bethancampbell.com/Cafe Grit. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving it a rating or review on YouTube, Buzzsprout, or your favorite streaming platform. I'll be forever grateful, and in return, I'll wish upon you copious amounts of bacon, your favorite hot beverage, and of course, pie. I'd love to connect and hear about your grit experiences as well. Please go to bethancampbell.com for links to all my social media. Cafe Grit is a product of Beth Ann Campbell, LLC, all rights reserved. Thanks again, and remember, you are a badass. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Take it easy.